Hey, this is Gina Grad.
Hi, this is Teresa Strasser.
Hi, everyone. This is Mike Errico.
Hey there, this is Casey Cavalier.
I'm Rocky Rose.
And you are listening to The Jay Franze Show.
Lucky you.
Welcome to The Jay Franze Show. A behind-the-curtain look at the entertainment industry with insights you can't pay for and stories you've never heard. Now, here's your host, Jay Franze.
Well, hello and welcome to the show. I am Jay Franze, and if you are new here, this is where we take a deep dive into the entertainment industry to provide you with valuable insights and entertaining stories. This week, we get to talk with a drummer and a drum tech. We'll talk with John Root. We'll talk to him about how he got to start playing drums, how he got his first gig in Nashville, at the Opry, and we'll take a deep dive into his time with Brooks and Dunn. Now, I met John when I first got to Nashville on my very first recording session. I was working with a producer named Jim Cristaldi, and John was hired to play drums. I've worked with John several times since then, and I can't wait to catch up with him tonight. So if you'd like to join in, comment, or fire off any questions, please head over to jayfranze.com. And now let's get started. John, sir, how are you?
Good, Jay. How you doing?
I am fantastic. I am so happy to have you here, sir. Thank you for joining tonight.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. Thank you.
So I am excited. I'd like to just jump in. I know we met years ago playing on a session in Nashville, and I just want to know what you're up to these days. Go ahead and start there for us.
Well, I've been playing about 2 or 3 gigs a week, generally different clubs around town. And I have also have a business where I maintain the house drum sets on Lower Broadway. All the bars down there have their own house kit, and so I'll go in once a week and maintain the kits and change heads, and I have relationships with the manufacturers so that if there's any problems or I need parts or a club needs a new kit, I can always go to them. And then for the past couple years, I've been on the road as the drum tech for Brooks and Dunn.
That's awesome.
Last year, Trey Gray was their drummer, who'd been there for 20 years. And now we have Greg Morrow out there, and I get to hang out with Greg and take care of his kit. The Brooks and Dunn gig is really good. It's only about 23 shows a year, 25 maybe, so I'm not gone a lot and can still maintain everything in town while that's going on too.
That's awesome. Greg's an awesome drummer. I mean, he's one of the best. I've worked with him in the studio quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be a pleasure to work with him, and he's just a nice guy.
Yeah, it's tough to just sit there and watch, someone like him play for 90 minutes a night,
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because you're a drummer. You play drums. So how did that all start for you?
Well, actually, it was, I think it was like 5th grade. I stopped at a friend's house, and he had a drum set, and it wasn't getting played. And I thought it was cool, and he wouldn't let me play it. So, it was like, it just kind of started to burn,
That's awesome.
And a neighbor up the street played drums, and I'd hang out his basement door and listen to him play drums. And my brother played guitar, so I just started. My parents bought me a snare drum, a Ludwig Superphonic, and then eventually added on a bass drum and then a hi-hat stand. And 10 years old, just started going from there. Alice Cooper and Elton John,
There you go. Not too bad of a team to look up to.
No.
I started in elementary school. My parents bought me a snare drum, and that was my instrument in school. But past the snare drum, I cannot get all 4 limbs to do something different. I don't know how you can do that, and to do it at such a young age. So is there a trick to it?
Well, honestly, there was an Alice Cooper song on a School's Out album called Public Animal No. 9, and it actually starts out with just the hi-hat. And then it adds the bass drum in for like 2 bars. And then the snare drum comes in 2 bars after that. And I just got it from there. I just listened to that song, and it kind of broke it down and taught me how to listen for the different parts. And put it together.
Do you think it's possible for anybody to learn how to move their limbs independently, or do you think that's just something you're born with?
No, I think anyone can learn it.
Really?
It's just a dedication that you put into it, and there's definitely we all hit walls of frustration at different points, but it's just having the motivation to move past those walls.
You start early, and at what point did you start working sessions in Nashville?
Well, I moved here in '93, so I was 29 years old. I grew up in Connecticut and played in all sorts of bands up in that area.
A fellow New Englander. I love that.
Yeah. I was in a country band, and we were playing all over New England, and we had a guitar player from Nashville, Darren Favorite. And he was in our band, and when he moved back home, we got some part-timers that could fill in for him. We couldn't get the full-time thing really happening, and I decided to move to Nashville. And with Darren's help, I got some gigs right off the bat. I moved to town on a Wednesday, and on Friday I had a gig on the Opry playing on the Grand Ole Gospel Time every Friday night.
No way. That quick?
That quick, Wednesday to Friday, yeah.
Holy cow. I know I moved there in 99, and I think that's the year that I met you. I think one of the first sessions I worked on was in 99 with Jim Cristaldi.
Mm-hmm.
So worked on a couple projects with you. But no, I didn't go straight from Arrival to the Opry, no. What's that like? I mean, to be new to town and to have one of probably your first gig to be at the Opry.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have because it was just, I just fell into it. But it was like I was bona fide all of a sudden. It's like people would say, oh, you're new to town, really, Oh, really? You got any gigs? It's like, well, yeah, I got this Opry spot on Friday. Oh, really? Well, hey, I could use you for this, You've got cred all of a sudden,
Right.
So it helped.
Oh, I'm sure it helped you. I'm sure it helps you get all those gigs from that point moving forward. But man, I mean, I guess like you said, you're early and you don't know how it works and you get your first gig there, but that's an amazing gig for your first gig.
With the gospel show, every week there was Jimmy Snow's the preacher, so we'd back him up on a couple songs, and then there'd be guests, and these guests would be coming from all over the world. And so we'd be learning new songs backstage right before going out to play a live radio show. So right away I got used to, what I play has to count. Don't try anything. Just play for the song and play the chart. And it helped a lot. And while those people would come around from all over the country or the world to play the Opry, they'd cut an album while they were in Nashville. And I got the recording experience that way, cutting records, doing that.
Well, Nashville's known for speed. The musicians in Nashville have to move quick. So for you to learn that at the Opry, and you said you were doing that weekly, so did that help transition to the studio where they put a chart in front of you and here go?
Oh, yeah, lots of times on the albums we would get a chart and we would play down. We'd get through the second verse maybe, and the leader would say, okay, stop, let's go red. And then we'd just go back to the top of the chart and play it down.
Without ever even finishing the whole song one time.
Right, and then go to the next song. He would make sure that we just had the attitude and the feel and the tempo and the key was right for the singer, and he liked to cut it nice and fresh,
So what was that experience like for you? Were you nervous at first?
Oh, yeah, very nervous. And a lot of the players that I played with were, the old Nashville A team, Leon Rhodes, Billy Linneman, Jimmy Capps, all of the Opry guys. You just learn. There was an acoustic player, Leo Jackson, who played on a lot of Alabama records, Jim Reeve records. I mean, going back to the 60s, he was an acoustic guitar player that everyone used, and just learning how to play my hi-hat with that acoustic guitar and learning how we would work together. And, here's a guy that was, 67 years old working with some punk 29-year-old new to town Yankee,
You and me both.
that he was, he was just gracious and, a good guy. And none of these guys would cut you too much rope, but they definitely help you out, you know?
I laugh because there wasn't a single day that went by while I was in Nashville where somebody didn't call me Yankee. And I know, everybody picks on everybody, but that was the way they picked on me was, oh, look at the Yankee. Yeah. He doesn't know country music.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You learn from the best of the best. And so that's got to help you. And then I know we talk about Broadway, and I don't know if people realize that that's a big deal within itself, playing on Broadway. And a lot of people get their start down on Broadway. And I mean, the music there starts at 10 a.m. and goes till 2 in the morning or
till 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're playing there. So what's it like for you there? Are you bouncing between bands? Did you find one band?
For maybe about 5 years, I played with one band. And this was back in 97, and Broadway wasn't what it is now. It was where there were like maybe 5 clubs down there. And there was more of a band attitude. And then it slowly turned into, well, hey, let me pick up another shift. And I can work with this singer on Tuesdays from 6 to 10. And this singer needs a drummer on Thursdays. So now I've got another gig at Thursday where I'm playing from 10 to 2. And you just start putting together, different shifts and building up your schedule. And there's been times where, I've done 14 gigs in a week down on Broadway with doing doubles. And I did a triple one time, which I'd never do again. I play left-handed, so it's a left-handed setup, mirror. So every time I go in, I got to turn the kit around. Right. So to do that for a triple, there was like no time to eat a peanut butter sandwich, between.
And that's only because the triple's at 3 different bars.
3 different bars. Yeah, I played the first bar, went to the second bar, and then went back to the first bar for the third gig to play, 2 to 6, 6 to 10, and then a 10 to 2. I hurt in places I didn't think would.
So I know the majority of people play right-handed, and when you go in, you have to take the time to change the kit around. But when you leave, do you put the kit back?
I don't put the kit back, and this has been a little bit of a discussion lately on a Facebook drummers group. You don't know who's coming in after you, There could be another left-handed drummer. Rare, but it has happened. As well as, some drummers are going to use 2 rack toms up and 1 down, or 2 floor toms and 1 rack tom. So for me to take the time to approximate what I think their setup is going to be, I'm wasting my time and as well as theirs, because it's not what they're going to be looking for.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, the person who's arriving should set it up to their liking, and then when they leave, let it be for the next person to come set it up to their liking.
Yeah.
So, no, I could understand that. It's just playing left-handed is a completely different setup. So it's not like just adjusting a tom or something.
Right,
You're completely moving the kit around. So.
And there's left-handed drummers that'll play open-handed on a right-handed kit. But I had a teacher tell me to do this, and, here I am.
It happens. So let me ask you, I mean, you're playing in all those bars and you're bouncing between the bars and working with the different bands. So I'm assuming that's going to help you with your networking. And does that help you get into more studio gigs as time goes on?
The studio thing and the live thing, it's gotten a lot closer together than it used to be. They used to be pretty much 2 separate camps. But because of the home recording process, and even now where people have mics in their, you can send stems back and forth to play tracks. It's changed a lot where there's a lot more of people have recording studios and recording capability now. So it's not as defined, 2 different camps like it used to be.
Well, that's something we've talked about in the past on a couple of occasions. And I mean, Jeff King was on a couple of weeks ago. I know he's on the road with you now. And when he was on, I was asking him too about the transition from being a live musician to being a studio musician, because he is truly one of the best. He's played on thousands of records at this point, but he still goes on the road now. And I was asking about that. And did he find it to be a hard transition? Because when I was there, everybody was complaining that the guys on the road couldn't get gigs in the studio. So, and once you go on the road, you were forgotten about in the studio.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that's not as bad these days.
Yeah, when I came to town, I had a guy, a mentor. He was the band leader of the Opry band, the gospel band. And he was basically like, you don't let people know you're out of town. You don't let them know you're on the road if you want to do the studio thing. That's changed a lot now. And I would have to say that Jason Aldean with his band, with Rich Redman on drums and Tully and those guys, that kind of started to bring where people were using their bands more again in the studio, which to me, it makes sense, because if they're with you 200 days a year, I think they're going to be able to find your needs in the studio. I just always felt like it was a producer not wanting to take any type of risk by using road players. Why not use the same 5 guys that played on the last hit record?
Exactly. But if your band is, especially these days, if your band is made up of studio musicians, there's no reason why they can't be the guys on your record.
Right.
But I remember a while back, when Tim was making his record, he couldn't use his own band for the first couple records, and he was very upset about that. And finally, he used his clout to be able to make that happen.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's more likely to happen without that.
Yeah. Well, because the whole label, the whole, distribution, the industry has changed so much. You were cutting 10 songs for a record before you released one, and now you're basically recording one record at a time, or you're streaming a song,
Well, you grew up in the Northeast like I did, and you mentioned Alice Cooper and stuff. But who were your influences growing up?
Well, I remember my siblings playing Motown and Joe Cocker and James Brown records. My parents playing Herb Alpert, and Tijuana Brass, just the Beatles, that type of stuff. But when I started drumming, it was Alice Cooper, it was Elton John, it was Yes, Genesis, Allman Brothers, Mad Dogs and Englishmen, Joe Cocker. Just that type of stuff. I didn't start playing country until 85, because there wasn't really a country station in Connecticut. Right. And grew up rock and roll, playing Queen and the Cars and Blondie and all that stuff. And I was in a band called the Hibachi Brother Barbecue Big Band, and they did international dance music. We were a 10-piece band with horns and percussion and berimbau and accordion and cello. And we played klezmer and jazz and Portuguese and blues and just all these different styles. And when I got out of that band, I saw an ad for a country drummer. And I was like, well, I hadn't played that style, so joined a country band. Within country music, there's so many different styles. There's swing, there's blues, there's rock, rockabilly. There's Appalachian, the bluegrass and mountain music. So there's all these different styles that you can bring into this one classification as country. So that's kind of what kept me there.
Oh, that's very cool. I mean, again, growing up in the Northeast, I played in rock bands and different genres, like you said, within rock music. I played in metal music. I played in hair metal music. I played in rock music, southern rock music. But to me, it was all just rock music.
Yeah.
And when I got down to Nashville, I thought the same thing. It's country music, like you're saying. It's just a little bit of everything. But no, I mean, they wanted you to specialize when I was there. Do you specialize in this and do you specialize in that? And speaking of changing things, let's talk about technology for a second, because you've been in the industry long enough to experience a whole bunch of different types of technology. How has that influenced the way you play?
I'm pretty caveman. I had the drum cat and the Elisa Steve Ford and the Emu percussion when I came to town, and was doing a lot of sessions on the pads and things like that. I had accounts doing kids' TV shows. We're playing a drum cat, which is like a TV dinner. Just when that kind of phased out, I was doing more acoustic, just playing acoustic stuff. And the triggered cross stick was phasing out to just back to the natural cross stick. So basically, I just own drums and cymbals and sticks and percussion these days. I've got a little loop machine if I need it.
Now, do you use that in the studio?
No, not really.
You don't create your own clicks?
No, that's the studios mostly do that. I have that all set up already.
No, that's cool. I know depending on who you work with, some people create their own, some don't.
Yeah.
I always like to generate the click for the band because that way it's to Pro Tools where, I don't have to line things up after the fact.
Yeah.
And that's another point. I mean, talking about Pro Tools, you started while there was still tape, and now you're in the world of Pro Tools. How is that different for you?
Well, anybody can get it right in Pro Tools. When there was tape, you had to play the take from even, from the top to the bottom, even before they were comfortable punching in. And so it's just kind of a different attitude. You still, when I moved here, we had a click, but still things could breathe. It wasn't getting snapped to a grid yet. Where now, that's just, standard. So,
Which did you prefer?
Maybe because of my age, I like things that live and breathe and be in a room with 5 other people and share ideas and have it be a communal experience. And I think if there's 5 guys with 10 years experience in the room, that's more than 50 years experience right there. It's just, you got to be able to bounce ideas off each other and try things. And when you get tracks in the mail, you don't always have the opportunity to do that.
Right. I remember everything was on tape, and there was very few edits because you're taking a razor blade to tape, and you are making some edits, but it wasn't like it is now. Now, I mean, I feel like I'm more of an editor than an actual engineer sometimes. I'm constantly making edits for people. But like you said, with Pro Tools, you can do that. I still like the idea, like you said, you get 5 to 7 guys in the studio and you play. To me, that's still the best way to do it. But there's that balance where you can do it in the studio with 5, 7 guys live, but still record digitally and have the ability to make some changes.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like, the Beatles did it with 8 tracks, and everybody's chasing that still with all the technology, and they're not getting there.
Well, I remember talking with Eddie Kramer. Eddie Kramer is the guy who engineered a lot of those records, or some of those records. When I was talking to him, we were at a school and we were talking to the students. And one of the students said, just like you, I only put 1 microphone on the drum kit. And he said, well, if I had the ability to put 12 microphones on the drum kit at the time, I would have done that. But I just didn't have that ability. And everybody in the room like, oh, I get it now. You experiment with what you have. And that's all the Beatles were. They were just nothing but a big experimentation.
Yeah. And it's funny because you think about, if I could put 12 mics on there, and then they put 12 mics on there, and then they gated them, so that it was just picking up that one instrument.
And then you're triggering samples and
you just start going backwards.
Yeah. Now I've been on a ton of sessions where we're catching a drum kit, and they spend all this time setting up the microphones and finding the perfect placement of the kit and the perfect placement of the microphones and then the room microphones. And then at the end of the day, we're replacing everything with samples.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't understand. But hey, so during those times, what was your most memorable moment?
I think, just some of the people I got to record with. Guitar player Bird Burton, who was with the Amazing Rhythm Aces, Leo Jackson, working with Leon Rhodes, just, Billy Linneman, those Opry A-Team guys, just some of those things. I did some sessions with a guy, Reggie Vincent, who was the co-writer on $1 Billion Babies for Alice Cooper, who also worked with Liberace and John Lennon. I worked on some of his solo stuff, and just some of those times were pretty special to me. Yeah. Especially when $1 Billion Babies was the first album I ever owned. And then I'm working with the guy that co-wrote it,
When you're working with people like that, do you feel out of your league?
You can't. That's just, you have to drive the bus. And you just kind of put those thoughts aside and you're there just like they are and anyone else in the room, and you put your pants on the same way, and you're just there to listen and feel. And
well, even the biggest of the biggest artists were always nice. There was very few people that weren't nice.
When you look back afterwards, then you go like, wow, that happened. But in the moment, it's just kind of like, you just kind of like suck it up and say, I can't go there. I can't be a fangirl right now. I gotta
Right.
just do my job.
I always laugh. People ask me all the time, "Oh, what's it like working with this artist or that artist?" And I'm like, the people that I got excited about were the producers and engineers. Those were the ones that I looked up to. So getting to work
Yeah.
with some of the best producers in Nashville and stuff, I was like, this is great. That's what I liked.
The same with me. The other musicians that all of a sudden I'm like, Leon Rhodes was with Ernest Tubb for years. To have him call me to play, that's meaningful, to me.
Oh yeah, that's the stuff that matters for us. I mean, I'm an engineer, so I look up to engineers and producers. I mean, you're a musician, you're looking up to the musicians. And getting to play with, I mean, even in the studio, getting to record some of these musicians, like we talked about Jeff King. I mean, Jeff King was always a blast to be around. I know you're on the road with him. Do you ever have a chance to work with him in the studio?
No, I haven't. But I could see where his personality, just is big in the room. Because he's just such a funny guy to be around.
He is. And speaking of big, I mean, he's a big guy. And when I first met him, I mean, he comes across, he looks like a lumberjack. I mean, he's a big dude, and he picks up the guitar, which is tiny next to him. But he comes across like, oh, God, you better stay out of his way. But he is so nice and so funny. It's just a blast to be around.
We have a lot of interplay during the Brooks and Dunn gigs. Even, I'm the tech, I'm the drum tech, keyboard tech. So I'm off the stage, at stage right where he is. And, we're always passing glances and, kind of, enjoying moments together,
Well, let's take a deeper dive into that for a minute. I mean, what's it like being on the road with Brooks and Dunn?
It's outstanding. I did the road for about 10 years when I moved to town. And I kind of got tired of it. I wanted to just chase my dream, not someone else's. So I decided to stay in town and just build up my accounts in town. One of the first friends I met in town was Trey Gray, a drummer, who's drummed with Faith Hill, Brooks and Dunn, Jewel. There's a list. Reba, he was Reba's drummer most recently also. And Trey and I were friends right off the bat. He was in a band, and he left that band, and I took that seat. And then there's been so many gigs where Trey left the seat, and I took the seat. And we've just, we've been brothers. And so a couple of years ago, they needed a drum tech, and Trey had been with Brooks and Dunn for about 19 years at that point. And they knew that I maintain kits and take care of kits and tune kits. And Trey has Huntington's disease, which I've always said if I could be out there to support him and to help him, I would go back on the road in a heartbeat to do that. And the crew chief, John Shaw, gave me a call and said, hey, we got this position open. This is what we can offer you to do it. What do you think? And I've got friends in the band. Gary Morse, the steel player, is a good friend of mine. Jimmy Stewart's a good friend of mine. I worked on his project, his demo project, to get him a deal. Lou Toomey. So these guys were just my buds. And it's like Herb Schuker's out there. Herb's a great drummer. He's a guitar tech. Played with Randy Travis. So it was just like I get to go out on the road and hang out with my friends and my best friend, Trey Gray. So it was like, yeah. And they've been touring for over 30 years, and they know how to do it, with the catering and the way they treat us. There's 6 buses and 6 semis, and we're selling out arenas and festivals. And I mean, we just did a festival like 45,000 people last Friday night in Myrtle Beach.
That's amazing.
18,000 sold out in an arena on Saturday, So it's a big production, and it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. Real good people.
I was just working with students the other day, and we were talking about the business side of music right now and how the price of everything has gone up, and just the price of just running the buses alone has gone through the roof. So to be on the road with 6 buses is just amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean, the show's got to be going well if you're on the road with 6 buses
and 6 semis. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about being a tech for a moment. I mean, we know what a musician does, but what's the actual role of the tech?
Well, we have local hands in all the venues, so it's not like we're lifting cases and things like that. It's the cases get brought up onto the stage, and I set up the drums. And what I've done ahead of time is I've spiked the carpet with gaff tape, so I know exactly what stand goes where. There's memory locks on everything. So I'm setting up the drums, and I'm cleaning them, and then I'm tuning them. After working with Greg a while, I know how he wants his drums to sound. I use a drum dial, which is a gauge that measures the pressure at each lug on the drum. So it's easy for me to duplicate and replicate the way he likes to have his drums tuned.
Talk about that a step further, because people hear the drums being tuned a lot. And in the studio, we even have some guys who take the trouble of tuning to the key of a song.
Yep.
So what does that actually mean?
Well, there's a membrane on the top and the bottom of a wooden or a metal shell, and there's tension screws, tension rods that hold that membrane in place with a hoop, and you're trying to get the pitch even at each of those screws. And you can get that pitch to match a note or just to match a tone. And then you do that on the top and the bottom. And depending on the relationship, if they're both tuned the same or if they're tuned differently to different pitches, the drum is going to sound different.
Okay. So do you typically tune them both to the same?
Typically both to the same, yeah. And then you might drop the bottom a little bit just to get some of that ring out of it, to kill off some of the sustain, just so it's not too long. Depending on the drum, it'll have more sustain or not.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So I'm assuming if you're on the road, you're not tuning to a song because you're playing so many songs within a night that are in different keys.
Right.
So is there a good generic spot to tune to?
It's just, it just depends on the size of the drum. You know, if it's a 12-16 floor tom or a 10-12-16, you know, you're kind of going for thirds with 3 drums. But the floor tom, you might even drop a little lower. It just depends on what the drummer wants. Trey was very radical, I could say, in his tuning. His overtones, he would like them to have a little more character than Greg, say, likes to have more of a clear note. So it's just learning the individual drummer.
Greg's a beast behind a drum kit, too.
Yeah. He just plays for the song. He's, I'd say, simple, you know, and then there's these times where I just kind of see him lean into it and, you know, pull out this monster fill, you know,
Right.
And the kid explodes and he goes back to keeping time.
It's very tasteful.
It's just always very tasty,
Yeah.
And thinking about the arrangement, the message that's being conveyed, and just even things from night to night where, you know, I can hear like where another instrument in the band might go to like a heavier eighth note just for like a bar, just, you know, like a passage into the next section. And I'll hear him like just drop out of that eighth note on the hi-hat just because musically it's being picked up somewhere and it doesn't need to get stepped on. You know, just lots of little things like that. I can sense Greg, you know, the way he's tuned in musically to listening to everybody. It's nothing about what am I playing, what's my part. It's what's the music wire.
No, he's definitely tasteful and like he's a beast. He hits those drums hard. He's pretty impressive in general to watch, but in the studio, I always enjoyed working with him.
Yeah, he's played on some of my favorite records, so it's just pretty cool.
There you go. So let's go back to you in the tech world. I mean, describe what your day's like. What time does it start?
So 9 a.m. Generally, the backline truck is getting unloaded. So the crew, which is 4 guys, Brooks and Dunn's crew is 4 guys, we position ourselves at different places around the arena. And as the local hands are wheeling off the cases, we'll point to where we need it to drop. So that, you know, we can then, our guitar tech, our drum tech station, our stage left guitar tech, and then the band gear goes out to the middle of the floor. And then probably about an hour after that, we line it up and get it on a forklift, and they forklift it onto the deck. It gets wheeled over to the sets, and then we open up the cases and start building the sets. And we're probably done with that about noon.
Well, stop there for a second, because I'm assuming that this stuff has to be done in some sort of a sequence. Can you just talk a little bit about the sequence?
I mean, at 6 o'clock, there's people in there putting chalk marks on the floor, measuring where the lights are going to go, where the video wall is going to go, where the front of house is going to be stationed, monitor world. Then they start bringing in the trusses and hanging the lights and hanging the video wall. Then they have to build the sets and put the sets up there. And then the band gear goes up there. And then that's when we start building the band gear. And then as we're building the band gear, front of house and monitor world's getting wired together. And then by the time we're done with band gear, we generally have power. And then they start miking up the kit and other instruments. We might have a break for lunch while they're miking everything up. And then we'll do a line check around 1:30 or 2 o'clock. Then the band shows up for sound check at 2:30. So the line check is just to make sure that each input is firing. It's getting to the board. It's getting to the front of house. They'll acoustically check the drums to make sure there's nothing wanky going on. I'm not really playing the drums. I'm just kind of hitting them one at a time to make sure that it's all there. And then the band shows up, does an hour sound check from 2:30 to 3:30. They'll run through songs because there's many different instruments. There's one song that the banjo's played. So they do that song to make sure that the banjo's working. There's songs with the lap steel instead of pedal steel. So they make sure to cover some of that.
Are they singing during the sound check?
Yeah, there's Ronnie or Kix will be out there. Sometimes they're not. The shows run to tracks, is run to a click track. So, the timing of everything is always the same. For rehearsal's sake, they have a pre-recorded vocals so that while they're rehearsing, they can have their place in the song.
It'd be rough to go up there and play for an hour right before you have to do your set.
Yeah,
for the night.
That's 2:30 to 3:30, but we don't play till 9 o'clock at night. There's downtime.
It's like doing 2 shows in a day, though. Back to Your World and on Broadway doing doubles.
Yeah, and then after the show's 9 to 10:30 generally, and then we pack it up. Backline is the first truck that gets packed, and then they start tearing down the audio and tearing down the sets and tearing down the lights and tearing down the video and hit the road at about 1 a.m, wake up in a parking lot in some other city.
So are you working till 1 a.m?
No, I'm done. I'm done around 11:30.
All right. But still, from 9 to 11:30, that's a long day.
Yeah, but there's, it's like what we do, and there's breaks in there. Like I said, we unload the truck at 9, and it takes till 9:30 maybe to get the gear off the truck. But then, we don't get it up on the deck until 10:30 or 11. So there's an hour there to take things out and tune and clean and inspect to make sure everything's didn't get damaged. So, it's a long day. It's a long day in all, but it's not like I'm in a sock factory or anything.
That's true. And you get catering.
And I get catering, yeah.
What's your favorite food on the road?
Breakfast.
Breakfast.
I'm easy. Eggs over easy. Bacon, some toast, coffee.
See.
Yeah.
See, I'm more the dinner guy, looking for the steak and the potatoes.
Yeah.
And
well, we get prime rib and pork shoulder and things like that. That's all pretty good too.
And it's typically buffet style too, for the most part. You get a few choices.
Yeah, and there's vegetarians with us, so there's lots of those types of foods too. the ones over there, I go to over there, but
I go to the meat side.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we do this thing on here we call Unsung Heroes, where we take a minute to shine the light on somebody behind the scenes that doesn't typically get the recognition. So is there anybody behind the scenes that supported you in some way or helps you behind the scenes that you might want to shine a little light on?
It'd have to be family. It would be the first thing. My wife is ultra, ultra supportive.
Can we ever call my wife?
Bought me a snare drum for my birthday, this year, So she's just always, always been patient and always hears my stories when I come home excited from a gig and looks at me like, yeah, you're not really that cool, Keeps me down to earth,
That's awesome.
Then there's, like the drum shop here in Nashville, Forks Drum Closet. It's just awesome in the way that anytime I need anything, whenever, I'm trying to investigate about gear or how to make something work or a part I need, Forks is always there.
Is that the one on 8th or 12th?
They were on 12th.
12th. Yeah.
But now they moved over to Chestnut, over kind of near where the old baseball stadium was, Chestnut and 4th. They've got everything. And all the guys there, they've just been wonderful. For years, for 30 years, I've been in Nashville. Yeah. And,
That's
and
awesome.
then there's, I've got a business where I maintain house drum kits on Lower Broadway. And there's people that help me out when I'm in Iowa. And I got a broken bass drum head at Whiskey Row. I got to figure out how to get them a bass drum head. There's Pittsburgh and Jake and Cindy and Roy that have helped me do that stuff. So, just guys like that.
Very cool. That's great. Yeah, I know you were talking about your wife, and I bust my wife's cookies all the time, but she's always there she puts me in check, and she keeps me in line, and she makes sure that I don't let something subpar go out.
Yeah. So. It's very, being a musician, the focus always seems to be on the music. What kind of musician am I? What can I play? What's my gear? How do I hold the drumstick? What are my inspirations? All of that stuff. But very little of our focus is business and how to treat what we do as a business so that we can be successful as a business. Being successful as a musician is one thing, but as you know, there are great players out there, but they've got, a Kool-Aid stain on their shirt or their pants are too short. You know what I mean? It's like they just don't have that. They'll get by because they're such geniuses at their instrument. But we all can't be that genius, Some of us are more in the trenches as just working. And when you're doing that, you have to have, a good business attitude, and it's a balance, and you have to have that. And my wife has been very, very instrumental in smacking me in the back of the head, telling me I'm an idiot. I'm doing something wrong,
That's what my wife does. But you're right. You are your own brand. You have a reputation that you have to live by, and it's up to you to decide what that reputation is going to be. So if you want to be the one with the Kool-Aid stain on your shirt, then let's have it. You better have some amazing talent to back it up, because otherwise you're not going to get the gig.
Right.
And especially in Nashville, the saying is you have to be a good hang. So, everybody says that in the studio. They say it on the road, because you're living with these people for a long period of time. And it's better to have somebody you can get along with that can just play than somebody you can't get along with that plays amazing. So
that's the most important thing. 1 hour on stage, 23 hours on a bus. Do you want someone's stinky socks in the lounge? Do you want them to spill their cereal on the table and not pick it up?
That's awesome. Hey, we talk about the attitude and everything of these people that you have to work with. So are you experiencing any hijinks or, jokery on the road?
Yeah, there's some characters out there. It's a lot of fun.
Are you one of them?
I try not to be. My wife tells me, don't be funny. It's just, with Jeff King. I just played a little trick on him a week or so ago, and I was kind of happy with it.
Jeff King's awesome. He's a funny dude. How do you take your joke?
He took it in stride. He laughed, and then he told a bunch of his friends about it. So that made me feel good. But I don't feel safe.
Well, let me ask you, for those who don't know Jeff King, session player, he's on the road playing guitar for typically Reba, but he's also playing for Brooks and Dunn, and he's a jokester. So I noticed, and I'm going to assume this is in retaliation to your joke, but I saw on his social media a picture of Reba and Jeff playing guitar, but it was your face on Jeff's body.
Yes. Well, what happened is we go into the arena, and there's pictures on the walls of all the different people that have played there. Pink, Jay-Z, Reba, and of course, standing next to Reba, holding his guitar, cheesing big time, is Jeff King. And I'm just like, golly, So I took a little piece of gaff tape and I put it over and gave him a little mustache on the picture.
Nice.
And then I wasn't too coy about it, and they found out it was me. So then later in the day, they took like a giant picture of just my head, and they put it over Jeff's head next to Reba. So I've got like this giant head on Jeff King's body next to Reba.
That's what I saw. Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, the tour manager said, "Hey, so did you go take that down?" I said, "No, I didn't. I didn't take it down." He goes, I said, "Some people told me to leave it up." He said, "Who told you to leave it up?" I said, "Well, Jeff King told me to leave it up." He goes, "Well, okay, that's okay."
Okay, then.
So we
Fair
left
enough.
it up. And what's funny is that if like some building manager or someone cleaning the facility sees that picture taped up there and they
Right,
pull
they
it
just-
down, there'll
Thinking of
still
a
be Jeff
mustache.
King with a mustache there. So
That's too funny. John, sir, can't thank you enough for being here. Do you have any final words you'd like to leave us with?
I appreciate you having me, Jay. This hour went by real fast. And just a good time, everyone. Enjoy music. Have fun.
Now, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. John truly is a great guy, both inside and outside of the business. So please join me in giving a big thanks to John for taking the time to share his stories with us, and thank you for taking the time to hang with me here. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. You can do just that and find the links to everything mentioned over at jfranze.com/episode 16. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Jay Franze Show. Make sure you visit us at jfranze.com. Follow, connect, and say hello. This episode has been brought to you by VR Knives, your source for 100% custom knives made by a true rock star. So, if you're in the market for a new piece of art, reach out to VR Knives. 407-421-5528. 407-421-5528.